So, Matteo does not look relieved to see David. Like, just straight up, he does not. He looks frustrated to me. And I think it makes sense why he isn't relieved, because he knew David was here. It wasn't exactly a gamble for him to come here. David pretty much told him. But I remember when I first saw this, I was definitely kind of worried when I saw his facial expression. I was like, wait, don't do this. Don't come in too hot. Don't be too harsh. And this brings up another really, really huge difference between this scene and the one in the OG Scum. Matteo and David talk, and they talk quite a bit. And they don't just talk, they scream. They have a conversation. It is very raw, it is very real. And it is messy, right? It is a little bit harsh. A lot of it does come from tough love. It's not just this slow motion cinematic scene that just ends with one line of dialogue. No, they need to talk it out. And I think that was so important. If they didn't have a conversation here, could you imagine how weird that would have been? If they just had a silent reunion with Matteo just being like, don't run away, you're not alone. Like, what? That would not have worked at all. They need to get this stuff off their chests, right? They have not had a real conversation with one another since the beginning of episode 8. And even that was barely a conversation, because it was mostly David coming out and Matteo just kind of not knowing what to say. So you might not even consider that a conversation, and if you don't, then I guess their last conversation was in episode 5. Yeah, they needed to talk here, so I'm very glad that Druck let them not just talk, but really get everything out, even if it's a little bit messy. And I do like that there is a major contrast between this pool scene and the previous pool scene from episode 4, in which there is very little dialogue, and that set up this very natural balance and connection between them. And this scene, I think, also reminds us of that connection and of that balance and how much they do understand one another, but this time they do use words. It's not just an unspoken thing. And I think that is very important. At this point, they need to be loud and clear about a lot of things. And then we get this shot of David. This is the first time that we've seen David since the end of episode 8. And I love this shot. I think it's striking that this is the first shot we get of him since episode 8. And it's almost upside down. Like, it's so overhead that it almost is upside down, and it's disorienting in that way. I don't really know what else it could symbolize beyond that, but I really, really do love it. Yeah, Matteo's pissed. Matteo has this major fear of abandonment. He is sick of the running away and the hiding, and he is hurt. He feels a bit betrayed, I think. I think he has a right to feel a bit betrayed and a bit frustrated here, and I think it falls in line with his character. I really do. I love David's body language there when he starts to get up. He really slouches quite a bit. It looks like a wounded animal. It's really cool. And then Matteo is still coming in hot here, still definitely frustrated, but he sees that David is not doing well. He sees that David is already tearing up, so he immediately balances himself. He immediately holds it back a little bit, and his tone completely changes when he asks, "What's up?" It's a lot quieter, it's a lot softer, it's a lot more caring.
Ist dein Scheiß ernst hier? Was ist los?
He puts his frustration aside for right now, as he should, because he wants to listen to what David is feeling. And we have seen instances in which David is the one to have to adjust the way that he's acting in order to be in balance with Matteo. But here we see Matteo doing that. He is the one who has to adjust in order to be what David needs him to be right now. This conversation in general is really important in telling us that this is not a one-sided connection at all. They both understand each other. I love how David is able to speak here. I said it before, but this is so necessary. He needs to be able to have this moment to just fucking scream, to just get everything out. He has suffered so much, and he needs this moment of catharsis, just being able to say what he's been through and own it and claim it and hopefully find a way to walk out of it and walk forward. And the echo just makes all of this even better.
Natürlich. Die werden mich wieder auslachen oder fragen, wie ich pissen oder Sex haben will. Ja, aber jetzt bin ich da.
So Mateo really raises his voice there. He tries to kind of get in the conversation when David says it'll just be the same. Mateo's like, no, it won't be. And then David keeps going. He keeps spiraling. He can't think of anything other than it'll always be this way. It'll always be this way. So Mateo, he fucking butts in. He interrupts that negative thought process. And it is harsh. It is. There's no way around it. It is harsh. He screams. I have never read this scene as Mateo dismissing anything that David has been through. Of course, I am a cis white woman, so all of my opinions are going to be through that lens. But to me, this is Mateo desperately trying to interrupt David's negative thought pattern, because that's not going anywhere. That's not leading him anywhere productive. So Mateo needs to do something harsh and clear. He needs to say something harsh and clear that makes David listen to him. I don't think this is him dismissing what David has been through. I don't think this is him saying that, you know, transphobia won't exist anymore because I'm here. I really don't think that's what he's saying at all. I think he's saying, yeah, that exists. That really sucks. And it's gonna continue to suck. It is. You know, it's not just gonna go away now that you're in love, now that I'm here. No, David is still going to suffer, unfortunately. But I think what Mateo is saying here is that I'm going to be by your side through all of this. I can't make it go away, but I can help and support you. And you don't have to just run away from everyone, because I want to help. I want to support you. And you've got to stop trying to disappear. You've got to stop running away from that support that I'm really desperately trying to let you know that I can offer and that I want to offer. Mateo is desperately trying to get David to see and to hear that he is in this for the long haul. And once again, I think it's necessary for them to be harsh here, for this conversation to be volatile and visceral, because there's so much tension here. So much has happened between them, and there's so much passion on both sides. You know, we've seen Mateo be active with David. We've seen Mateo fight for what he wants and take an active role in pursuing a relationship with David. And this is like the final test, right? This is it. If Mateo can't convince David that he's not alone, David's gonna run away. He's going to be gone. So Mateo really is feeling that desperation. He has grown so much as a person. He has learned how to have an active role in his own life, and he is not going to let it slip through his fingers this time. So I think that is another reason why he raises his voice here, which is something that Mateo from a couple of months ago never would have done, because he never cared that much about anything. But now he wants David to know that he is there for him no matter what. So we can actually see there that David's mindset about running away has actually changed a little bit. He still thinks it's his only option, but he's now willing to leave with Mateo. But of course, Mateo is not interested in that. He hasn't been interested in running away for a couple of episodes now. As he becomes more active in his own life, he becomes less and less infatuated with wanting to run away from it. In the very first episode, he and David did bond over wanting to just get away. But at this point, and through Mateo's growth, he's learned that, you know what, maybe there are better ways to deal with things. Maybe there are better ways to cope. Maybe I can grow as a person to make my life something that I would actually want to be a part of. So they really scream at each other there, and although I don't love how Mateo grabs David here, I do still understand it. Because it is very intense right now and they are very heated right now. I still don't love that he grabs him. I don't think that was necessary. But I do like how Mateo stops what he was about to say. So after Mateo rejects the idea of running away, David is like, well, what the fuck am I supposed to do? And Mateo starts to say, you should, but then he drops that. And I think it's very important that he does drop that, because as a cis white man, Mateo has no authority to tell David what he should do to combat all of this prejudice that he is facing. You know, it's not his place to offer any of that. He can offer support. He can offer a shoulder to cry on or an ear to listen. But him, like, telling David what he should do, I don't think that's his place. And I'm glad that Mateo doesn't think that that's his place either. He doesn't have empathy for what David has experienced. He can't. He's cis, he's white, so he can't tell David what he should do here. So instead of trying to do that, Mateo refocuses the conversation on what he does have an authority over, what he does know, and that is that David isn't alone, that there are people around him that want to support him. He has a support system that has been trying to rally behind him this entire time, and that are ready to support him and fight for him if that's what he wants. And I talked about this back in clip 1, how Mateo realizes that he has a support system when they all come together and try to figure out what they should do for David. That's when he really realizes it. And because he knows that, he's now able to tell David, hey, you have a support system too. I know that. I can't empathize with your struggles as a trans man. I just can't. But I can empathize with the fact that you have felt so lonely and that you have forced yourself to be alone. But now, there's a support system waiting for you. Mateo knows firsthand that opening up to people and allowing yourself to accept that support has made him feel so much better. So he offers that same advice to David. That's what he does have authority on. And I really love how he kind of expertly reframes the conversation in that direction, instead of trying to tell David, you know, what he should do in relation to all of these prejudices that he's faced and will continue to face, unfortunately. So this is Mateo saying that he understands David's drawings. He understands why David has drawn himself as a vampire. He understands Only Lovers Left Alive. He understands David. We've seen David understanding Mateo. We've seen a lot of examples of that because we are in Mateo's POV, so we are going to be more aware of the times in which David has been understanding of Mateo. But here, I think, is a clear indicator of the opposite. That it is reciprocal. This understanding is reciprocal. It's not just that David understands Mateo. Mateo also understands David, and through this art that he has shared with him, he has come to understand him. And he's proving it right here. You're not a fucked up vampire that needs to hide from society. Oh God, I'm not gonna cry. And then that line, I'm here, and therefore you've got all the time in the world. I mentioned how time is a big factor in this episode and also in the previous episode. So in episode 8, Mateo took time away from David in order to process what David told him. For most of this episode, David took some time alone in order to process what happened to him and try to cope with it. But that time kind of became maladaptive, right? He hid away from people. He didn't tell Laura or Mateo where he was until right now. He scared a lot of people. He was willing to just disappear completely because he is so used to isolating himself, because he tends to take too much time away from people. So Mateo saying, I'm here and therefore you have all the time in the world, is basically his way of saying, instead of isolating ourselves and trying to figure everything out on our own, why don't we try to figure this shit out together? We can take all the time we need to figure it out, but as long as we're there for each other, it doesn't matter how long it takes. Mateo saying this and Mateo being there for David doesn't fix the discrimination that David is still going to face, but it does let him know that he doesn't need to hide anymore. He doesn't need to run away. He doesn't need to disappear. He does not need to force himself to be alone anymore. He can take all the time that he needs, but just not do it alone. So this marks the second major landmark of their relationship, the first being their first kiss, which was also in this pool. And just like in that first one, Mateo was very nervous about this, right? He was nervous about the kiss, so he just kind of stopped talking. He just let David take the lead. And here, he actually takes the lead, right? He's the one who says, I love you first, but he mumbles it, he starts biting his nail, and he even turns his back to David because he's so nervous, which is extremely in character for Matteo, right? And I love David's face after Matteo says it. He's like legitimately stunned. So even though this reunion is harsh, it is volatile, there are a lot of intense emotions here, I do stand firm in my opinion that Matteo says exactly what David needs to hear. He manages to get there eventually, right? It starts out pretty harsh. He has to kind of scream to counteract and interrupt these super negative thoughts in David's head and the spiral that he's going through. But Matteo eventually gets there, right? He manages to say the exact right things that David really needs to hear right now. And I think that's monumental for Matteo, considering how he just didn't really speak that much in the first half of this season. His communication was absolutely abysmal. I think that the way that Matteo navigated this conversation, especially as someone who is as nervous and as anxious as Matteo is, it shows a lot of growth for him. He's willing to scream. He's willing to fight, to do anything to make sure that the people around him know that he loves them and that he's there for them, because they have been there for him and he's now accepting that. And then of course it ends with the studio version of Take Me to Church. Finally, we have heard the acoustic, stripped back version of Take Me to Church several times throughout the second half of this season. And I did mention back when it first appeared in episode 5 that it was kind of a way for David to keep Matteo at bay a little bit, to kind of keep their relationship separate from the rest of the world. Listening to the acoustic version instead of the studio version was a way to symbolize the fact that their relationship was still incomplete. There was still hesitancy there. But over the course of this entire season, and even just over the course of this scene, their relationship has grown out of that place that still houses some hesitancy and uncertainty, and it has grown into this place of just pure, unbridled love. They have both accepted the fact that they are not alone anymore, and that they can be there for one another, and that they can support one another. And they have so many people around them who also want to support them. And this episode in particular is also really nicely bookended with both versions of the song. The episode starts with Matteo quietly, privately listening to the stripped back version, and then it ends with like literally the beat drop of the chorus of the full version. And I love it. I think it's really, really well done. I love this scene. Man, who doesn't love this scene? I think that's finally it. I think I've talked for long enough. That's all I have for episode 9. I will see y'all on Wednesday to start the last episode. See you then. Thank you so much for watching.